Okay, so welcome to another installment on the Mariner Biology YouTube channel. This one's going to be talking about how your body regulates certain conditions. Alright, so the first thing we got to deal with is that we've been reading this word regulation all over the place. So let's think about what it means to regulate. Alright, so when we're regulating something, it means we're changing it or adjusting it to maintain it around a certain standard. We're required to keep whatever it is we're talking about, whatever this condition is, around a certain point or a certain standard. Alright, so let's write down what the dictionary says. Alright, and it says to adjust to some standard or requirement. That's what we're doing when we regulate something. Right, we're adjusting, we're making changes so it's where we want it to be. Alright, so if you're thinking about that, then you can think about what kinds of things your body needs to regulate. And there's all kinds of stuff we've been talking about in class. We're going to list some more later, but I think you can come up with a couple. I could do my Dora the Explorer imitation right now and sit there and you can pretend I'm staring at you. And you can come up with some answers. But again, we're going to do that later, so let's move on to the next thing. Okay, there's in the world there's two kinds of what we call systems. There's open systems and there's closed systems. Okay, the first one we're going to talk about is a closed system. Alright, and when we have a closed system, there's nothing being exchanged with the environment around it. So if you look at this box and you think of it as a closed system, and let's say there's some liquid in there, there's not going to be any exchange of materials between what's inside that box and what's outside the box, the surrounding environment. Okay, and that's pretty boring. That's not what we are. So again, you have no exchange of materials, and so that's not us. So let's get rid of it, and let's draw a living thing now, which is what we are. Okay, in living things are considered open systems because there are all kinds of things that you're exchanging with your environment, and you're bringing things in from the outside and you're giving things off from the inside back to the outside. Okay, so we are called an open system. And here's just a few examples of things that we exchange. Alright, I'm sure you can think of a couple, but right now you're breathing in oxygen and breathing off carbon dioxide. Right now your body is taking in nutrients and using some of them for energy, or some of them to build new molecules, or using some of them for whatever purpose. But when we do that, right, when we do those chemical reactions that we're taking that stuff in from the outside and using, that's called metabolism. And when we metabolize things, we build up waste products. So in addition to taking in all those nutrients, right, we have to get rid of the waste products. That's another way we exchange with the environment. Okay, so we've established that. Okay, so we've got this exchange going with the environment, but it's really important to regulate that exchange. We can't have too many things, we can't have too many bad things build up in our body. We can't have, and also too much of a good thing is a bad thing. So we've got to be careful. So that this whole idea of regulating, needing to adjust whatever it is that's in your body and maintain it around some standard is super important. Okay, so just let you see that, and then again, too much or too little of what you need can be bad. And we've seen some examples in class, and we'll talk about some a little later, especially with like blood sugar and calcium and your temperature. I don't know what happens when your temperature gets too high. Okay, and then so when we're talking about this standard, this requirement, what do we call that? Where your body wants to be, where you want your temperature to be, where you want the amount of sugar in your blood to be. What do we call that? Give you a second. Hopefully you came up with it. That's right, it's called set point. Okay, and then we have many ways of regulating this set point, or keeping it where we, keeping our concentrations of sugar or whatever it is where we want them to be. Okay, so let's look at the next slide here. Alright. So again, we've been talking about a few conditions that we have to maintain around a set point that we need to regulate, right, so we can maintain that set point. So some things are like, we've talked about blood sugar levels. Right, for a given amount of volume of your blood, you're supposed to have a certain amount of sugar. If it gets too low, it can be bad. Right, you can start to lose focus. You've all had this experience in class. You didn't eat breakfast. It gets harder and harder to, kind of follow what's going along. Okay, and sometimes you just pass right out. That's a bummer. Please try to avoid that. Eat your breakfast. All right. With temperature, right, we're all familiar with what the set point is. We want to stay somewhere around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. It's not always going to be exactly at that point, right? If we step out in the sun, our body temperature is going to go up a little bit. We're going to do something to bring it back down. If it gets too low, we go into a cold room, or we step outside in the early morning from our house, then temperature is going to drop a little bit, and we want to bring it back up to that set point. Okay, some other things are things like calcium, water, and the pH of your blood. You don't want your blood getting too acidic. That's a bad thing. Okay, so let's talk about that so your body has this ability to maintain all of these different conditions around a set point, right? What do we call that? I'll give you a second to think about it while you read this again. Okay, so again, you've got all these different things that you need to regulate, to maintain a set point for. And what do we call that? It's a big idea. I wrote it at the very beginning of this presentation. That's right. It's homeostasis. Okay, and then in humans and lots of other animals, okay, there's two systems in your body that are controlling the ability to do this, and those are the endocrine and nervous systems. Okay, so that's about all we have for this one. So what you're supposed to get again is this: you get this idea of homeostasis and set points and regulation, and hopefully understand what open and closed systems are. Okay, in our next video we'll be talking about things like negative feedback, hormones, and glands, and all the stuff that makes this possible. It makes it possible for you to maintain homeostasis. Okay, so we'll see you on the next one.